from Wakefield. It's the Nolan Macari Night Show starring Nolan. Why you enjoy Nolan as guest this week, Anthony Macari to the show. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here's Nolan. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Nolan Macari Night Show podcast. And as I was saying in previous weeks, as I always say, with this, I always wanted to reach out and get some people. And obviously, you got to start out somewhere. And I'm really proud of people I've had, but this one is a big highlight for myself. I don't sit closely to television to watch the news often, but when I do, it's usually when this person is on, as is the rest of my family. So it's a big treat and honor to have this person on. He is the meteorologist for NBC 10, my favorite station. He is the one and only Anthony Macari. Anthony, thank you for joining us this week.
Wow, thank you for the introduction, Nolan. That was incredible. I really appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, I had to, and being honest, and I think it's can be seen. There's a warm and positive vibe that comes from yourself that I think you try to present on the news and on television. So I had to get that because it's all about positive vibes and being warm and welcoming. So I had to have you. So I'm just thankful that you wanted to take the time out because I know you're a busy person who's probably been up since the crack of dawn.
Oh yes, we get up early for the morning shift, no doubt about it.
God bless you for that. I was just speaking of early morning, I was just in Boston over the weekend for a club tennis tournament, and I had to be up by 5:00, and that's not a favorite thing of mine to do. So if you can do that on a daily basis, God bless you.
Here and there, it's just try to get to bed early. That's all you can say, right?
I can't do that, but as I like to do with all my guests that I have on here, I like to catch up. So for Anthony Macari, how has life been during these wild times that we find ourselves in?
It's overall it's been good. I've made some progress here at work, slowly stepping my way up in ways I didn't necessarily think was going to happen, really. But it's been fun. Family always here to support me. I'm from Rhode Island, obviously, so I get to live in close proximity. I'm from Johnston, so I can't complain too much. Just happy to be here very much. So.
Now you were at the station NBC 10 before the pandemic. Now,
right?
It's the people who do report the news and sports and stuff like that. Their job was affected because they couldn't be in person. They had to do a lot of Zoom interviews and stuff like that and manage and stuff. For you though, was there any change in how you're presenting the weather, or was it just the same before to now?
I think. Yeah, it's funny you say that because weather, doesn't stop no matter what happens, in the world around us. So really, we didn't see as big of a change as other departments. We didn't really have opportunity. I didn't have an opportunity really to work from home unless I was sick, which occasionally did happen. But a couple of our meteorologists did work from home. So we had to set up all that type of a thing at the start of the pandemic. But overall, we still did all of our shows, still did all of our forecasting, and none of that really changed.
Well, it's been interesting time. I'm sure it's definitely been nerve-wracking because from your perspective, because a lot of people have been losing their jobs or cut back, and for someone like yourself to move on forward and not, I don't want to say not really been affected because I'm sure it's affected yourself one way or another, but it's definitely an interesting time. I want to jump right to it. For you, and obviously you said you're from Johnston, and now you're working at a station close to Johnston. What's it like for you after, growing up watching the news for your home state to then reporting, the weather for your home state?
Oh, sure. It's an amazing feeling because I grew up watching people like RJ and Mark, even John Biorsey, Gary Lay for a little while when I was younger. And it's just an awesome opportunity to just be in their company. It's something I never thought really was all that possible. I had to, work a few years in other stations to kind of get my way here, but it's my family probably loves it the most, to be totally honest with you, because there's only so many jobs just in television in general per station, per market, as we call them. So like this is the Providence, New Bedford market. We cover all of Rhode Island and Bristol County, Massachusetts. So there's it's just a small community, and I'm only 10 minutes from the station. So who would have thought?
That's not bad. You don't have to worry about waking up super early then if you live close by to the station. Now I'm curious. Talking about the job market, obviously, jobs are, hard to come by sometimes. Obviously now, some people it's hard to get people to get jobs, but for someone like yourself as a weatherman, what's that like in terms of job prospects out there? It's kind of curious.
Job as far as like we all use websites like just for TV people. So all of us have an opportunity to network. We send emails in to news directors to try to get jobs. It's difficult. I probably applied in my first job to like some 40 something stations, and I got like 3 responses, 2 interviews, and one of them I got my first job. It wasn't here, obviously. I worked in Maine first, northern Maine. I don't even know if you've heard of Presque Isle, but that was my first TV market. I loved it. But yeah, so the job market is there's been a lot of turnover recently from what I've heard in the industry. So there are jobs out there, but they get filled very quickly and are highly.
Now, you hear a lot, and I've asked this question to other episodes, where you have people and they say, oh yeah, who are in this field or a field like this, or like, oh yeah, I've wanted to do this since I was 6 years old, and I've always known I want to do this.
Yeah.
For you, I would think it would be somewhat similar to that. What was the fascination with weather and stuff like that wanted you to do this?
Oh, I love that question. Yeah, so when I was growing up, aside from watching local news, I used to love watching the Weather Channel because they had coverage even when local news was not on. So it was really like there were some big snow years when I was younger, like 2003, 2004. I loved snow. I'm a big snowmobiler, so things like that were always exciting. So, and the real thing too was like the 2005 hurricane season. The Weather Channel covered that a lot. That was, when you're young, you don't realize, the power of Mother Nature is fascinating. But you don't like when storms cause devastation. But obviously, young kid, you're talking like Hurricane Katrina, Rita that year. I think it was Wilma too. So they made their way to the Greek alphabet. So that year, just watching it all the time, just really got me fascinated. And, my parents will say it too. I always used to say from like elementary school that I wanted to be a weatherman. It's in like my yearbook, and nothing changed my mind.
Yeah.
So I went to school for it.
Well, there you go. You got it. You want someone that is like that, where they're passionate about it and really want to do it, because it's not as fun when you're not like that. You talked about going to school. What was it about that school, Linden State College, that you wanted to go there? And was the program that you graduate in, known for that?
Yes. So Linden State, it's a lot going on. You mentioned jobs and whatever. Linden State is actually now called Northern Vermont University at Linden. So they've even changed their name since I left. But they're definitely well known. The degree I have is atmospheric sciences. Actually, even within this television market over at Channel 12, which I know you watch 10, so thank you. But like Tony Petrarca, TJ Del Santo, they're all Linden Staters and so on. We all went to the same program. Jim Cantori from the Weather Channel, I got to meet him and learn with him. So the reason I went there really is because I grew up going up to Vermont a lot to, mountains, foliage, snow, and so on. So they had a great tuition rate when I went there, a good discount, because the state of Rhode Island does not have any meteorology program at all. So they give you a discount just to attend that school. And I got my degree in atmospheric sciences. And I like small colleges. My college probably had like 1,500 students when I was there. Wow. That's like as big as some high schools around here. So insane to think about.
I think I graduated from South Kingston High School in 2018, and I think I had about 1,000 to 1,200 kids there. That's hard to believe, but hey, if that's your thing, that's great. That's wonderful. Now I'm also curious. How do you, when you're going to school for meteorology, how do you go about in terms of, is there a certain what goes on with that?
Yeah, so weather and meteorology, really, it's a lot more science and, well, obviously science, but it's a lot more math than you might think. So when I was in high school, there wasn't, you take your regular courses. There's not a whole lot of prep work you can do for like atmospheric sciences or meteorology necessarily in high school. Obviously, have an interest in weather and math. I can't say I loved math all that much, but I was decent enough at it. It definitely helps explain certain things. So then you start off in the degree program, and I had to take like right up to calculus 3 and all this stuff that if I looked at some of those program problems right now, there's no way I could do some of those. But they help you understand the application of all the science courses I was taking. Plus at Linden, there was degree tracks. So you could, not everybody who's a meteorologist, goes into television. most of them don't. You could, go for your master's or doctorate and become a teacher someday or a researcher, or you could go into the private company or the government for the National Weather Service. So I picked the private industry and broadcasting tracks. And so along the way, I took courses that helped me as best as possible prepare to my first TV job. And I think it was really helpful with that.
I'm trying to think of the word, but I side with you in terms of the math part. I'm not a huge math man, never was, and I don't even want to go near math. I haven't touched math at all at URI. It's not my thing, but
I don't blame you.
God bless you for sticking through that. I'm sure I would think at most colleges, if not all of them, there's news a news outlet or whatever you would call it. What were there any options? Were there any options for that where you went? And if so, like, how does that help you in terms of pushing you forward into the career path?
Yeah, so at Linden, actually, we had like something called, there was their local newspaper run by the clubs in the school or whatever. So a lot of the journalist students, we worked together quite a bit. Those who were going to journalism, those who were going to television meteorology. So a lot of the journalists would do the newspaper, but we also had something called News 7. And that's huge, honestly. I didn't even mention that earlier. That was a big selling point of Linden because a lot of colleges didn't have something like that. It was literally a live television station run by college students exclusively that aired one show a night. So, that you have to go through the nerves as a student of doing that. Now, how many people were actually watching? It could have been anybody in the St. John Valley, basically up there. It definitely could have seen it, and up in the Northeast Kingdom of Vermont, it could have been tuning in and listening to us. So that was super helpful. So I took part in News 7. I did newscasts at least once a week, and that's what helped me a lot. So yeah, it's kind of like a Channel 10, but with a lot of young college kids.
And I'm sure that helps, as you mentioned the nerves. I'm sure that definitely helps, although it's not as big or I don't want to say major because I don't want to down them, but it definitely, I'm sure, helps acclimate you to the field as well as help you realize what you're walking into is not something blind.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I went to my first real job at a television station in Maine, like, they were stunned that I knew about the scripts that got printed out, the rundowns, as we call them, to look at when I'm coming up and so on, and how to read time and get cues. Because we wear something called an IFB, which I forget what it stands for, but something that where the directors and the producers can talk in our ear and they tell us how much time you have left.
Okay.
So you're practicing that in college, because the first time that happens, it's tough to think when people are talking to you at the same time and trying to figure out what to say and how much time you have left. So all that was super helpful.
And so for you, when you got to Maine, then after if doing internships or whatever, and then doing the student news thing, you're pretty, I don't want to say make it seem like you're overly confident, but you had some level of confidence, and the nerves weren't as high as they were if you didn't do the student news thing.
I think so. I was definitely still nervous at first. For the first, I wouldn't say the first couple shows, just that. It was for a little while where I settled in, but I definitely was more confident from that heading in than I would have been otherwise. And you actually mentioned internships. I did one internship for 2 summers before I graduated from Linden. They were actually both at Channel 6. The morning meteorologist there, Chelsea Priest. We had like a family friend and connection or something helped me get that, and she's great. Taught me a lot about everything I needed to know about an actual Providence TV station. So can't give enough thanks to her for helping me get where I am.
Can't, but you had another calling that was to NBC 10 News.
I know, now we're competition. Now we're competitors. That's how it goes, though.
You can't be too friendly because you got to come out on top at least once. For you,
that's true.
Working in Maine, obviously known for their snow and cold weather. And obviously, I was gonna ask, how that was like. But you like the snowmobiling, so it's a different thing. But for you, when you're reporting the weather for an area like that, where during that time it's a lot of snow and maybe the same weather, how do you go about that and not try to be as if you want to be exciting, but how do you make it exciting even if it's not different?
That's true. You got to like lift people's spirits. So especially up in Presque Isle, Maine, the average low temperature in the heart of winter is 0 degrees every morning. And like the average high is 19. So it was frequently lower than that. Like we had plenty of days where it'd be like 10, 20 degrees below zero outside. Like, so it's tough to bring energy. But one thing that was helpful to me, just especially coming out of college too, I had a show called Rise and Shine there. So the first half hour of our entire morning newscast was a weather themed show. So I got to do forecasts. The Aroostook County, which was my market, it's basically larger than Rhode Island and Connecticut combined. So it was a big area. So I split it up. I did forecasts for each of those individual areas, and I was able to do national weather packages and other stories. So just to help break it up, I would say things like that. Aside from it, you just got to be happy every day. And at the end of the day, when it is sunny out, even if it's 20 degrees, it kind of felt nice up there.
It was that hard for you? I mean, obviously you went to school for a month, so it's different. And, you experienced some cold weather in Rhode Island growing up. But for you, was that hard, trying to, be jazzed up and excited, even if the weather wasn't changed?
It was definitely difficult at times, especially the first couple winters that I had to go through up there. They're long. Yeah. There's a lot of snow, like 150 inches or so most of the winters I was there. That's a lot. We average like 30 something here at Providence. So think about that. They get a lot of snow. But I definitely enjoyed it.
Free. And then afterward, obviously starting out during there, you learning about yourself, how to do the job, whatnot. And as we mentioned before we got going here, we talked about trying your best to present what you think is going to be what happens, the results. Now, most people people like to complain a lot of times. It doesn't even have to be about the field. It can be about anything else, and that's been pretty present over the last handful of years. But for you starting out, how did you deal with, I don't want to say criticism, but almost in a sense where people may call you out for trying your best, but it may not be exactly what you predicted?
Yeah, we get some of that, whether it's on Facebook, Twitter. People are just like, oh, I thought I was going to do this, that. Sometimes they would comment on forecasts that had been like a long time ago and it's not accurate. Yeah, I mean, other times, really, if I got it wrong and they comment about it, or even on the air, I will just comment and be like, yeah, we didn't get this right. Learn on it and get better for the next time, hopefully. So you can't just shy away from that type of stuff. Just do your best to acknowledge it and learn from it. So if someone's really mean, then I might just ignore it. But aside from that, if it's constructive criticism, then I'm all ears and want to grow with that.
Was it something you learned early on from when you were doing the student station, or is it something that you kind of learned as time went on to, not, put so much thought into that stuff?
We got the only criticism we got in college was constructive, and it was from our professor helping us. It wasn't from viewers. When I got to Maine is really when it started. Most just about everybody up there is very, very nice. Yeah. So I'd be in Walmart or whatever, and people be like, "Oh, you're so nice. Thank you so much for your forecast." And others, they'll just like rib you a little bit if it wasn't perfect. It's not too bad.
But after ABC, not ABC6, well, that internship, but then up in Maine, then you came home back to Rhode Island to ABC 10 this summer of 2019. What was that like for you to when you saw that there was an opening here, and then that whole process and finally getting it?
Yeah, so there was actually one stop in between Maine and Providence, but it was very short. I went to AccuWeather in State College, Pennsylvania. So in TV, you have contracts, and usually like you sign for a few years or something like that. And it's tough to leave, in the middle of a contract without paying something. And so my contract in Maine was coming up in 2019, and I didn't have an opportunity to come back to Providence just yet, but I didn't want to sign on for more years up there. Yeah. So I had an opportunity in Pennsylvania at AccuWeather, and I went there. I worked on weather graphics behind the scenes, but that was a no contract job. So although I felt bad, once the opportunity came up here in Providence, I applied for the position. I came down and met people at the station, spoke to the news director and so on, got to meet Mark Searles, who I work with most, things are crazy, around here right now, but we used to work in the same building quite a bit, same office and whatnot. This is in the weather office. I just got to meet all of them, do some interviews, and I got the job.
Was this the station you watched growing up, or were you watching other ones that are now competitors with you?
No, I would say I definitely watched this one the most. Memory serves me right. I'm sure whatever my parents were watching and stuff, I've watched others along the way as well. But I certainly remember Channel. Everyone watches it.
The station over the years, I feel as though has had a lot of success in terms of other stations and comparing them. I think in terms of the quality that's produced on the channel. I mean, for you being a part of that and then joining into that fun part definitely is something I'm sure that you would enjoy, and makes you feel good to be part of a group that definitely puts forth this much energy.
Oh, sure. Everyone's dedicated here. There's people here usually stay. The on-air talent. We have amazing people behind the scenes, our producers, directors, and everybody just make the whole craft really come to be, and they don't get enough attention with that. But someone like, Patrice, I think like 42 years or something she just crossed. Like, she's been here such a long time, very well respected. Everyone loves her. Stuff like that is crazy pedigree to be around. I'm too new for this.
For you now, speaking of people like Patrice who've been here for a while, you get the chance to work with two other great people on television, RJ and Mark. What's that like working with both of them?
Yeah, so our schedules don't always overlap with RJ, I would say, but they I wouldn't say they come from different. Like, RJ has been forecasting for a very long time before like all the computers that we rely on. So he hand prints out all of his forecasts. He's drawing the fronts on the map, looking at all the data, like stuff that we learned in college, but then they show you the way to do it on the computer.
Yeah.
So it's really cool to just get his insight. And there's just things you miss, sometimes on computer stuff. So great. He's been super helpful, giving me information about how to go about things, read forecast maps, maybe have an up on what the temperature might be before other things catch up. And with Mark too, he's so knowledgeable. He's worked in Southern New England weather. He started in Vermont too. So he kind of was like up in that area and then came back to Providence as well. So he's just been an amazing mentor and coworker, obviously. It's great. Usually you don't get to call someone that when you work with them, but I learned a lot from him just working with him, and I hope to continue to do so for a very long period of time.
Well, I'm sure definitely even coming back home, it definitely in doing representing, the state and, doing your best to present the news. I mean, the weather, I should say. But I'm sure you also provide a sort of comfort in terms of, making sure it was, smooth and not as nerve-wracking starting out, especially since, you have that relationship coming from Vermont as well.
Oh, yes. He is very accommodating. In my first week here, I did an on-air show, which wasn't necessarily planned, and my microphone died. That made it onto YouTube. So, things don't always go right in TV, but he's there to just pick you up.
And I feel over the years, or not, I don't say over years, but since you've gone here, and when I decide to tune into the news and watch yourself, I feel as though you have there's, I don't want to say, I mean, obviously improvement obviously from starting out, but moving up the ladder in terms of being on television. I feel as though you've been on television a lot since you started, which is great. For you though, how important is that? And then as well as continuously getting better and being on it all the time.
Yeah, so I'm like officially on weekends now, doing the weather and stuff in the morning, and then 3 other days during the week I'm either doing weather blogs or noon shows. Like, I got the noon show coming up that I'll be preparing for and so on. But experience trumps everything. When I started here though, I was like, my title, digital weather producer and meteorologist. So we always trying to grow that brand, reach people who might not otherwise just tune into TV for no reason. So we'll do the Instagram, Facebook, all the good stuff out there, and get more people to watch us. And I write weather blogs basically daily. So those are my initial tasks, but I was always filling in for other people and getting airtime that way. So now it's more consistent, and it's certainly, it was a nice vote of confidence.
Yeah. For you, how much for you and your field, how much of it is, being hungry to want to move up in order to, be in it and stay in this career path?
Yeah. If you're complacent, you probably wouldn't advance any further. You have to show some, learn some new things, mess around with 3D or whatever, and yeah, you definitely need to branch out a bit. Just want to.
I'm curious how much, I mean, obviously, you put a lot of time into, the job and putting out the weather and when you would think it is, but I would hope that there's a lot more time put into that outside of being on camera than there is on camera. How much time does it usually take for you or, any other weatherman, if you could take a guess, in terms of putting out that prediction, whether it's just for the day or for that week?
It's sometimes it's a lot harder than more. It depends on what the weather, like today wasn't as difficult, as long of a period of time because the weather is generally quiet. But we're on the air at 4:30. Today I was here at like 3:15 a.m. So in about an hour, and that's kind of close. Some other shifts, like I'm here 2 hours before, and that's a comfortable amount of time usually to get ready. So I'd say 1 to 2 hours is what it takes to put together your not just your forecast. I'll show you right here. On my little paper where I write the forecast down. And I put the temperatures, weather condition, whatever, what I think it's going to be for 10 days. And then I enter that into our graphics. So once you have the forecast, the rest of my time before the show is making some graphics. And then we're on the air.
For you being a weatherman, how do you assess, October, that's when it starts to get a little colder, gets a little darker out, or I don't say a little darker out, gets darker at 5 o'clock and almost now. As a weatherman, how do you assess how it's staying warmer out? Because it was 70 degrees the other day in Boston, and it's middle of October. How do you go about, conceptualizing that?
It's difficult. We look at records, we look at climate trends and things that are happening. It's kind of, we don't harp on, I guess, climate change enough maybe during the newscast, but we see some trends that have definitely happened, whether it's 30 years, 100, so on, that show some potential for warmer weather later. We didn't break any records like in the last week in terms of the warmth. It was just a milder than average pattern, a ridge of high pressure, as we call it, building up over the eastern U.S. And it stayed there for a long time. So that's why it was as warm and really as humid as it was, especially what was that, Friday, Saturday type of thing. But that's really all it comes down to. It's just our patterns are changing. Sometimes you get this type of weather that can come for longer. And now today is a day that's below average. So they flip flop.
It's not as cold yet as I'm sure it is up in Maine and Vermont. So it's not as, I'll take it. I'm not a huge fan of anything below 55 degrees, but I'll
you're
take
gonna be in
this.
trouble tonight.
Well, I that's what I don't like about Rhode Island. I've been here all my life, but I like the warm weather, and cold weather at dark at 6 o'clock is not my thing. But that's
once you go live somewhere else, and you see that it can be much colder.
Oh,
it can be much darker, especially up in Maine. The sun would set at like 3:45 or something in the winter. Like, that's crazy.
Well, my grandfather was in the reserves up in Maine, Caribou, Maine, and he would tell me, he would tell me the stories about when he'd be up there and it'd get dark early, fast, and the whole day would be dark, and that's not fun. Caribou
is the town over from Presque Isle, and I was just up visiting there a week ago, so that's funny. Small world. I was right there.
I'm sure they already had a lot of snow up there.
No snow yet, actually. They can get snow in October. And it can measure in inches, but not yet.
Well, before I let you get out and get on with your busy schedule, I want to do the segment that I always do in the show that I enjoy. It's the one-word challenge. For everyone out there who doesn't know what it is, the one-word challenge is when I put together a list before the interview, and with things that have something to do with the person or the field career path they're in and stuff like that, and the guest has to do their best to say a word or a sentence or two that best comes to their mind when they think of that. So are you ready, Anthony?
Well, we'll find out, right? Yes, I'm ready.
First one, RJ Heim.
Tenure.
Mario Hilario.
Hilarious.
Mount St. Charles.
Education. That's not great, but
Vermont.
Foliage.
Presque Isle, Maine.
No.
Meteorology.
Interesting.
NBC 10.
Legacy.
Anthony Macari.
modest. I don't know.
Well, Anthony, I can't begin to express it. So I'll just say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day and week to spend some time with myself. I appreciate it a lot. And as I said earlier, you're we're big fans of you at home, and we enjoy seeing the news and your personality. So thank you for taking the time out to do this. And for those out there who are tuning in, and as I always like to joke about, there's tons and millions of people who are tuning in each week, like it's the Joe Rogan podcast. But for all those out there, do us a favor and subscribe on YouTube, follow on audio platforms, like, comment, subscribe, share. That tells me that you enjoy what you're watching and tuning into each week, and it helps grow the program. And I really appreciate that. If you want news and updates regarding to the podcast, follow on Instagram, Nolan Carr at Night Show, and on Twitter, Nolan Carr at Night. Anthony, is there anything that you want to plug out there?
No, I'm on Instagram and Twitter as well. You could just look me up, Anthony Macari. It's just my name. Make it easy. Maybe an underscore in there, but that's about it.
With that being said, in the words of Johnny Carson, I bid you a heartfelt good night till we see each other again.